Hello everyone, thank you for joining me for my second YouTube video. In this video I'll be talking about drainage and root rot. I've got some root rot problems with my soil.
This amaryllis is rotted. When I pulled down the leaves they came right out of the soil. I'm going to talk about an experiment to fix this soil problem, but first I want to explain a little about my history with growing plants. I used to experiment with growing plants in containers without drainage holes. These plants here are examples of problems I've run across with this method. Slow-growing, weak-looking plants. Now you may be thinking, well, of course they're not doing well, the roots can't get any air. Well, I've always found it interesting how I've seen plants growing through rocks and cracks in sidewalks, and even growing in just water. Places you don't think you would ever see plants grow, and that's probably what made me want to experiment this way. Here are some other plants that I have growing right now. Now you may start to notice that not all the plants look that bad. In fact, you can grow plants this way, and I'll show you some pictures of some of the success I've had. This picture was taken in 2009, and it's a bell pepper plant that I grew in a container full of composting vegetable kitchen waste. Here's some more of the bell pepper plants I had growing in my bedroom window. This one was right around 4 feet tall at the time of this picture. I ended up with plants that reached over 5 feet tall. I even managed to get a bell pepper out of a beer bottle. This pineapple is growing inside a pineapple juice can. Here's an elephant ear happily growing in a plastic cup. Here is another one growing in a larger container with no drainage. This long plant grew out of a small plastic bowl. I found out that these specific plants seem to do better in shallower containers. Here is a pothos growing out of a beer bottle. These seem to be one of the best plants for no drainage. I've had failures too. I sprouted some citrus seeds and I lost a few along the way, but 2 of them managed to survive. I also lost a couple of mango trees. This is a papaya seedling. The success of this plant is what made me think that papayas grow fine without drainage. Out of many tries, I've only managed to successfully grow 2 papayas from seed. This one was the most successful. The other one died recently after I transplanted it. I took this one out of the bottle and planted it outside. It died at the end of the season last year when the cold weather hit.
Another problem with growing plants like this is that a lot of plants will die if there's too much water in the soil. And since the symptoms for overwatering and underwatering are the same in most plants, it's hard to tell if the plant is getting too much water or not enough. Now you could think that plants die because the roots can't get any air. But if that's true, then you shouldn't be able to grow plants in water. And these roots look really healthy. But not all plants grow healthy roots in water. This one's rotting. Now what is it that causes some plants to be able to grow in water and some plants to rot?
It's not that the roots need oxygen. In the soil and in the air there are spores for microorganisms that are plant pathogens. The difference between when a plant rots in water or when it grows roots has to do with these organisms. They are also the reason why a plant will do fine growing in pure water but rot when soil is added to the water. Likewise, when a plant is in soil and the roots rot, that means conditions in the soil are favorable for those microorganisms. Rot likes 2 things, lots of water and low oxygen levels. Most of the time, rot occurs in soil with poor drainage. The microorganisms can swim through the water and sense the plant material chemically. So drainage helps in two ways. It allows the water to flow away from the roots and allows oxygen to the roots. That's why drainage is so important for plants and why pots have drainage holes. The main reason I was able to grow plants without drainage is because I was able to properly regulate moisture levels in the soil, and the plants that did well seemed to be more resistant to rot than other plants. Having drainage holes on the bottom of your container doesn't always mean you have good drainage. This beautiful spider plant unfortunately didn't make it through its most recent transplant. I moved the plant to a container with drainage holes and it rotted. The reason it rotted was because I used the soil that this ginger died in. The reason the ginger died is because the soil I used retained water extremely well. The top of the soil dried, but underneath it would not dry out for weeks. I obviously overwatered it. Not to mention, the soil may have included what the amaryllis started to rot in. This mango tree also rotted, even though the container had holes for drainage. So what do you do if you have this problem? From what I've read, it seems that common treatment for root rot includes removal and burning of the infected plant, the use of new soil, and keeping things sanitary. However, nature isn't sanitary, and you don't hear of whole forests getting wiped out due to the spread of root rot. I can't improve my soil if I keep throwing it out and start over every time I have a problem.
Just real quick, here's what the plants look like right now. I put them out in the sun too quickly, so a lot of the leaves burned. But I did get a bloom. And everything will green up later on. I'm not too worried about it for now.
So here's what I've been doing to fix my soil. I'm using a speaker grill to sift the soil after I let it dry out completely. From what I've learned, I should be able to use the same soil as long as I improve its ability to drain. Why do some soils drain better than others? What's the difference between clay soil and sandy soil? Clay does not drain well, but sand does. The main defining characteristic between sand and clay is particle size. So my thought is, maybe my soil isn't draining well enough because I have too many smaller particles in my soil and not enough larger particles. Maybe I could sift my soil to filter out the smaller particles. Due to the high organic content of my soil, the sifted soil should still hold on to moisture while providing better airflow. This is just an experiment of mine, and if you feel your soil has the same problem, you could save yourself a lot of trouble by adding lots of perlite to your soil instead. Here's what I ended up with after sifting the soil. It does drain really well, but I want to perform a quick experiment for you that shows how airflow affects drainage in containers.
This is my jacaranda that I was using the soil method with, experimenting with, and it seems to do good. Let me show you. The roots are starting to come out of the bottom. Here's some more that I've been growing in this type of soil, with drainage holes, of course, and they're doing well. Here's a couple that are in regular soil, the soil I used to have, but they do have drainage holes. This one's doing good. This one's not doing as good, and these don't have drainage. So you can kind of see the difference. Okay, so now I'm gonna repot my jacaranda. It's got roots growing against the walls of the jar, so it'll probably be pretty hard to get out of there. But here's how I'm gonna do it. I've got a plastic container, and I'm going to rinse out the dirt. Okay. Now I'm going to fill the jar up with the water in here and try to loosen the soil. Might need to rinse it out more. Okay. The container's getting pretty full, so those roots are really sticking to the edges of the jar and the bottom. Oops, I lost one of the leaves. I'm going to swish the water around in the jar using my fingers. I'll loosen the soil around the roots. The bottom part still stuck in there, so looks like it's starting to loosen up. There we go. Alright. Now I'm going to get the pot ready. Okay, now I'm going to take the plants. I'll probably try to spread the roots out a bit there. That should be fine. I pre-mixed some of the soil so that the roots will come in contact with moist soil instead of completely dry. I don't want the completely dry soil touching the roots because it might dry out the roots, and that would be bad for the plants. This soil here is dry, but hopefully a lot of the roots have been covered by the wet soil. Should be interesting to see how the soil mix works. Okay, that's good. Now I just gotta water the plants and I'm done. And there it is. Now I have to let the water drain out and then pour the water out so that it's not sitting in the water. But I'll probably let it sit there in the water for a little bit so the soil can soak it up. And then I'll let it drain out. I'll probably put something in the pot down here in between the bottom and the bottom of the pot up above so that the water can drain out of it. And then pour the water out and set it back in, and it's done.